July 26, 1953, they aired tense with anticipation as Fidel Castro and a band of brave rebels gathered outside the imposing Moncada barracks in Santiago de Cuba. Their mission, nothing short of challenging the iron grip of Fulgencio Batista's regime. Fueled by adrenaline and a desire for freedom, they launched a daring assault, but the element of surprise slipped away, replaced by the deafening roar of gunfire from the Cuban military and the chaos of battle. Despite the odds stacked against them, these rebels fought with unmatched courage and determination. Though the outcome was not in Castro's favor, one thing was clear: history was being made in the heat of the moment. But how did we get here? Cuba, 1952, a nation simmering with discontent. Corruption and a growing wealth gap between the rich and impoverished plagued the island under Fulgencio Batista's authoritarian rule. While the sugar industry thrived, its benefits flowed unevenly because of fluctuation in U.S. demand and seasonal sugar production. The economic dependence on U.S. markets meant that urban areas like Havana flourished, but rural areas remained poverty-stricken. Many Cuban farmers and peasants were forced off their land and into cities, where they worked in poor conditions for low wages, creating a large pool of discontented workers eager for change. Political corruption also ran rampant, with American businesses and politicians exerting undue influence over Cuban government officials. The Cuban Revolution marked a turning point in the history of Cuba, fundamentally altering its socio-economic structure, reshaping education and healthcare, and providing equality and justice for millions of Cubans after decades of oppression.
The Batista government was only the most extreme manifestation of a political system, and a political system that was corrupt, and an economic system that was stagnant. And that again has its origins in the late 19th and early 20th century. It just became worse and worse and worse with the passage of time.
The Moncada barracks attack served as a catalyst for the Cuban Revolution, sparking widespread opposition to the Batista regime and radicalizing Fidel Castro's revolutionary movement. Following the Moncada barracks attack, Castro was captured and brought to trial. Despite the gravity of his situation, he delivered a powerful and defiant speech, which has since become known as "History Will Absolve Me." This speech ignited a flame of resistance within Cuba. Castro was eventually released under an amnesty deal in 1955 due to public pressure and international attention garnered by his trial. After his release, Castro went into exile in Mexico, where he continued to organize and plan his revolutionary activities. In Mexico, Castro met Ernesto Che Guevara, a doctor-turned-Marxist revolutionary who would become a central figure in the revolution. Together, they honed their guerrilla warfare tactics and formed a core group that would later lead the Cuban Revolution, the 26th of July movement, named after the date of the Moncada barracks attack. Castro's return to Cuba in 1956 marked a pivotal moment as he led the rebels into the Sierra Maestra Mountains, launching a guerrilla campaign against Batista's forces. Through strategic prowess and steadfast resolve, Castro and his comrades gained momentum, rallying dissatisfied Cubans to their cause and expanding their influence across the island.
Tell me something about the plight of the ordinary Cuba.
The first plight now is the lack of freedom and justice. And after that, a low standard of living, hundreds of thousands of young men without job. But Cuba is a rich country with a wonderful future if we only have good governments.
On December 31st, 1958, Castro's forces launched a surprise attack on Havana, which was met with little resistance from Batista's troops. The rebels quickly gained control of the city, and Batista's regime was effectively over. Batista fled the country, leaving Cuba in the hands of the rebels. Castro's victory was met with widespread celebration among the Cuban people. The rebels established a new government with Castro as prime minister and set about implementing their vision for a new Cuba. Immediately following the Cuban Revolution, Castro's government implemented profound socio-economic reforms with the goal of addressing issues such as inequality, poverty, and improving the overall well-being of the Cuban population. Land redistribution was a central focus, as large estates were seized from wealthy landowners and redistributed to peasants. Additionally, Cuba aligned with the Soviet Union due to shared beliefs, economic support provided by the Soviets in response to American hostility, and strategic considerations during the Cold War. Key industries such as oil refineries, electricity, and telecommunications were nationalized to reduce foreign influence and establish state control over vital sectors of the economy. These measures sought to empower the poor, diminish the disparities in wealth, and lay the groundwork for a socialist economy. Education and healthcare became priorities. A national literacy campaign utilized volunteers to eradicate illiteracy, particularly in rural areas. According to the Cato Institute, Cuba's literacy rate experienced a significant improvement, soaring from 76% to 96% after the revolution. The government also invested in healthcare, training medical professionals and establishing a network of clinics and hospitals across the country. These initiatives contributed to notable improvements, as evidenced by a substantial increase in life expectancy from 64 to 78 years between 1960 and 2015, positioning Cuba favorably compared to other developing countries. However, long-term economic challenges emerged. According to the Madison Project database, the nation experienced low economic growth, averaging 2.5% annually between 1959 and 1968, significantly lower than the Latin American average of 3 to 5%. Cuba became increasingly reliant on Soviet aid. Strained relations with the United States, marked by trade embargoes, further hindered economic development. Meanwhile, the collapsing sugar industry dealt a severe blow to the economy. The Cold War further complicated Cuba's situation. Castro's socialist government, backed by the Soviets, became a focal point. The U.S., viewing Cuba's revolution as a threat in its backyard, attempted to undermine Castro's regime. In 1961, just 2 years after the revolution, the CIA sponsored the ill-fated Bay of Pigs invasion, an attempt to overthrow Castro's government. However, the invasion was swiftly countered by Cuban forces, solidifying Castro's grip on power and alignment with the Soviet Union. Additionally, Cuba faced a significant moment during the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. This standoff brought the world to the brink of nuclear war as Soviet missiles were installed in Cuba in response to U.S. missile installations in Turkey. The crisis highlighted Cold War tensions and solidified Cuba's role in the global power struggle, highlighting the vulnerabilities of small nations caught between superpowers. With the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, Cuba lost its primary economic backer, plunging the island nation into a severe economic crisis known as the Special Period. The sudden loss of Soviet resources, trading privileges, and economic aid dealt a crippling blow to Cuba's centrally planned economy. Soon after, Cuba revived its economy by opening up their markets to foreign investment, promoting tourism and encouraging entrepreneurship in certain sectors such as agriculture and small-scale private businesses, leading to the next era of economic growth. Ignited by Castro and his rebels, the Cuban Revolution marked a turning point in Cuba's history, breaking the nation free from decades of dictatorship and foreign influence. Despite the many economic ups and downs, the revolution undeniably delivered advancements in healthcare, education, and social equality for the Cubans. The revolution's impact also reverberated across Latin America, sparking waves of revolutionary fervor inspired by the Cuban example. Globally, it heightened Cold War tensions, bringing the world to the brink of nuclear conflict, but ultimately resulting in the fall of the Soviet Union and communist ideology. The Cuban Revolution stands as a triumph of the oppressed, offering hope for a better future and inspiring movements for social justice worldwide. Despite differing perspectives, its undeniable impact reshaped history, emphasizing empowerment, progress, and the pursuit of a more just society.